A reading from the Acts of the Apostles, Acts chapter 15, verse 30, chapter 6 through chapter 16, verse 15. And so they were sent on their journey. Upon their arrival in Antioch, they called the assembly together and delivered the letter. When the people read it, they were delighted with the exhortation. Judas and Silas, who were themselves prophets, exhorted and strengthened the brothers with many words. After they had spent some time there, they were sent off with greetings of peace from the brothers to those who had commissioned them. But Paul and Barnabas remained in Antioch, teaching and proclaiming with many others the word of the Lord. After some time, Paul said to Barnabas, "Come, let us make a return visit to see how the brothers are getting on in all the cities where we proclaimed the word of the Lord." Barnabas wanted to take with them also John, who was called Mark. But Paul insisted that they should not take with them someone who had deserted them at Pamphylia and who had not continued with them in their work. So sharp was their disagreement that they separated. Barnabas took Mark and sailed to Cyprus, but Paul chose Silas and departed after being commended by the brothers to the grace of the Lord. He traveled through Syria and Cilicia, bringing strength to the churches. He reached also Derbe and Lystra, where there was a disciple named Timothy, the son of a Jewish woman who was a believer, but his father was a Greek. The brothers in Lystra and Iconium spoke highly of him, and Paul wanted him to come along with him. On account of the Jews of that region, Paul had him circumcised, for they all knew that his father was a Greek. As they traveled from city to city, they handed on to the people for observance the decisions reached by the apostles and presbyters in Jerusalem. Day after day, the churches grew stronger in faith and increased in number. They traveled through the Phrygian and Galatian territory because they had been prevented by the Holy Spirit from preaching the message in the province of Asia. When they came to Mysia, they tried to go into Bithynia, but the Spirit of Jesus did not allow them. So they crossed through Mysia and came down to Troas. During the night, Paul had a vision. A Macedonian stood before him and implored him with these words, "Come over to Macedonia and help us." When he had seen the vision, we sought passage to Macedonia at once, concluding that God had called us to proclaim the good news to them. We set sail for Troas, making a straight run for Samothrace, and on the next day to Neapolis, and from there to Philippi, a leading city in the district of Macedonia and a Roman colony. We spent some time in that city. On the Sabbath, we went outside the city gate along the river, where we thought there would be a place of prayer. We sat and spoke with the women who had gathered there. One of them, a woman named Lydia, a dealer in purple cloth, from the city of Thyatira, a worshiper of God, listened, and the Lord opened her heart to pay attention to what Paul was saying. After she and her household had been baptized, she offered us an invitation. "If you consider me a believer in the Lord, come and stay at my home." And she prevailed on us. In this passage of the Acts of the Apostles, the text switches from the third person to the first person. We go from saying he and they to we and us. This is because most scholars believe that Luke has now joined in on the adventure. And so now he is writing about things that he experienced firsthand, that he was with Paul when they went to Macedonia. Now, throughout this passage, we see preaching, we see sacrifices for the sake of the proclamation, even to the extent of Timothy, whose father was Greek, being willing to be circumcised, although it was not necessary. A very few paragraphs before said it was no longer necessary, but they had him circumcised. Why? So that he would be able to preach to the Jewish people. So that he would be able to preach to them that circumcision is no longer necessary. He himself was circumcised. We also see an argument between Paul and Barnabas. While these holy men are apostles, overcome by God, full of love, yet some of their humanness remains, so that they still have disagreements and arguments. And so I think this is something to remind ourselves of, that although there is this ideal of what we should be doing, there is this reality that we are falling short. We also see how God is being providential, how he is bringing Paul and the evangelists to Macedonia because he knew there were many there ready for conversion.